Hey everyone, it's Jenny and welcome back to my channel. This story ain't over. Today I am finally doing a wrap up after like 2 months now. I usually try to do these every month, but the last couple months sort of got away from me. And I had a few secret videos that I was working on, so I didn't want to spoil those ahead of time. So that's why I'm doing a wrap up all together for both February and March. I feel like the past couple of months have been pretty eventful and I've been pretty busy for both of them, but I did manage to get a decent amount of reading done. In February and March combined, I managed to read about 12 books when my usual average is about 4 books per month. So I feel like this is pretty good. I do have a few more books that I've technically read in March as well that I'm not going to be talking about in this wrap up because I'm doing a whole dedicated video for those last 3 books. And then another one will also be a reread of a book that I've read before, so you've already heard my thoughts on it, but that's The Stationery Shop, which we'll be reading for the Read and Color Book Club. A lot of these books I've already talked about before in other videos or other challengey type videos, so you can definitely check those out for more in-depth thoughts. And I'll also leave them linked down below in the description so you can check them out. But overall, I feel like February and March were pretty good reading months, so I'm excited for April and May. But on the subject of April and May and sort of spring coming, I did want to talk a little bit about the sponsor of today's video before we get into the books that I actually read in the past couple of months. So thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. You guys know Ana Luisa, I've talked about them multiple times before. Ana Luisa is a sustainable jewelry brand. They create some really elegant, high quality and affordable pieces that I just love wearing every day and also when I feel like dressing up a little bit. So I know I mentioned April and May and sort of spring coming along, and the reason I was talking about that is because Mother's Day is coming up in May, and I feel like Ana Luisa is honestly the best place to get something sweet and awesome for your mother or a mother you know in your life. Ana Luisa is running a really great buy one get one 40% off sale in the lead up to Mother's Day, so it's the perfect time to be grabbing something for yourself and also someone special as well. And as always, I'm super excited to share with you the pieces that Ana Luisa has sent me for this sponsored video, and especially today, my mom actually picked out these 3 pieces because I am gifting them to her for Mother's Day, so she's the one who chose all 3 of these pieces and I absolutely love them. They're really gorgeous. The first is this pair of earrings called the Avery earrings, and these are some really cute earrings. They're like a long chain that sort of loops through your ear, and at the end of the earring there's this little cubic zirconia piece to it. It's such an elegant piece and unlike anything me or my mom own, so I'm super excited for it. The next piece my mom picked out is this beautiful little chain called the Burt necklace, and it's got these little gold circles on this very thin chain, creating a very nice and dainty and elegant piece that is just perfect for every day or just like the flash of gold in your outfit. It's a piece that I probably wouldn't have chosen right off of the website, but my mom saw the beauty in it, and when it came in the mail I was like, oh my god, this is so gorgeous, and I really wanted to just steal it for myself. The last piece that I have is this Michelle signet ring. It's this really bold signet ring with malachite in the center and 14 karat gold on brass. It is such a nice statement piece for any ring lovers out there, and my mom especially wanted to get this in a little bit of a bigger size that she could wear on her middle finger or on her thumb as well. I absolutely love all these pieces and I'm so glad that I get to gift them to my mom for Mother's Day. So I highly recommend going and checking out Ana Luisa. They have such beautiful pieces that start at $39 but go up to higher end pieces. And they're really committed to being sustainable and carbon neutral from the sourcing of the materials to the disposal of their products. I absolutely love every single piece I've gotten from them, and they are just such long-lasting pieces that you can wear whenever. So yeah, as we're stepping into spring and you're thinking about Mother's Day gifts, I highly recommend checking out Ana Luisa and grabbing that buy one get one 40% off deal using my link in the description. Thank you so much, Ana Luisa, for sponsoring this video and for these beautiful pieces for my mom for Mother's Day. And now let's get back into the books that I read in February and March. Alrighty, so as I said, in February and March, I read a total of 12 books, and here they all are. So as you can see, this first set of 5 up here are the Bridgerton books, which I did a whole video on all 5 of these books, reading and reviewing each of them and ranking them for you guys as I was preparing for the release of the 2nd season. I know I haven't done a review for the 2nd season yet, and I hope to do that at some point soon, but it was so much fun just reading the books and sort of getting a taste of the world and the romances and also the characters as well. Surprisingly, I enjoyed these at face value a lot more than I expected to, but I also was disappointed by a lot of aspects in the later books. But a lot of you have told me that the last 3 books in the series are actually really fantastic, so I'm excited for those and I'm hoping to pick them up probably in the next month or so, or else closer to when the third season comes out. But just an overview for those of you who didn't see that video, the first book is The Duke and I, which follows Daphne and Simon. This is a bit of a fake dating romance situation. Has some problematic issues in this specific book and also in the first season, which I just want to flag. But overall, it was like a fun romance. They have really great chemistry in the book and also in the show, and I really loved their banter as well. That was like the highlight for me. The next book is The Viscount Who Loved Me, and this is Antony's story, who is the eldest son in the Bridgerton family. And for those of you who don't know what Bridgerton is at all, it's basically a Regency romance, like historical romance set in the 1800s, and it follows this one family called the Bridgertons, and each book follows a different sibling in the Bridgerton family and their love story. So yeah, this one follows the eldest son, Antony, and this one is a bit of a hate to love romance where the two characters really don't like each other at the beginning and end up falling for each other. This one is the basis for the second season as well, and it was a lot of fun. There are definitely a lot of differences between the show and the book though. I will tell you that now if you are coming to the books after watching the show, but I really, really love this one. It was probably my favorite or like second favorite of the series, and I love the chemistry between Kate and Antony and sort of their banter as well and how they just like really don't like each other and start to fall for each other. The third book is probably my favorite of the series, and that is An Offer from a Gentleman, and this is Benedict's story. I personally love Benedict both in the show and the books. I think he's really funny, and he was no different in this one. This one is a bit of a Cinderella story and a bit different from the other books, I would say. It does quite a few different things with the plot that the other books don't really do, which I found really nice and refreshing. But yeah, this one was so much fun. I was captivated by their romance and just the nature of how it all comes together. And they're also sort of struggling with something larger than themselves, sort of the society values and the perception that other people will have of them. The next book is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, and this is Penelope and Colin's story. This one was quite interesting and had some really fun bits to it, especially with like the other siblings and stuff, but this definitely wasn't my favorite of the series. I had some issues with like the chemistry between the characters, and I really didn't like Colin as a character in this book. But if you want to hear my full thoughts on this one, definitely go check out that other video I did about these books. And then the final Bridgerton book that I read was the fifth one, which is To Sir Philip with Love, and this is Eloise's story. And I mentioned this a lot in the other video I did, but I really, really love Eloise's character from both the show and the book. But as I was reading this, I was realizing that I actually liked her a little bit more in the show, and I like what they've done with her character. And so this book was definitely a bit of a letdown for me, which was slightly unfortunate because I was really looking forward to it. But if you want to hear more thoughts on this and any of the other Bridgerton books, definitely go watch that dedicated video I did where I review each of them and rank them, because yeah, I had a lot of fun making that one and I put a lot of work into it, so I hope you'll go watch it. And just so you know, that video has tons of spoilers for all the books and also the first season of the show, so just be aware of that. Alrighty, so aside from the Bridgerton books, I also read a bunch of these other books, and a few of these were for other challengey videos too. The Kiss Quotient was a book that I actually picked up for a romance-themed video I was gonna do in February, but because of my trip to LA, a lot of my video plans got thrown out the window because I didn't have time to actually read or complete them. So The Kiss Quotient was actually the first book that I picked up in that romance video that I was gonna do. I will probably do some sort of romance themed vlog or video later on, maybe in like April or May, so stay tuned for that. But although I didn't get to the other books that I had planned for that video, I did end up finishing this one, and it was so much fun. I knew a lot of people love this book, but I didn't realize how much I would actually really enjoy it. I listened to the entire thing on the audiobook, which I highly recommend because it was actually really good. But basically it follows our main character Stella, who is an econometrician, and she's also autistic as well. And so that has sort of colored her relationships and the way that she's been able to date as well. And so she's getting a little bit older. Her mom is sort of pressuring her to start, you know, looking for someone who she might want to spend some of her life with. But Stella is sort of convinced that she is not good at dating and doesn't know how to do it. And so she decides to hire an escort to help her sort of learn how to do sex and also dating and like all of those things, like all the relationship-y things. And so the escort she ends up hiring is Michael, and Michael is this pretty layered guy who has a lot of reasons for why he is an escort and also why he acts the way he does and everything. He's also got a really amazing family side to him. And these two characters sort of meet in this unlikely situation and end up sort of agreeing to sort of fake date and help Stella learn how to date so that she can eventually find someone else. And it was honestly the cutest situation ever, and the characters were so adorable. And I just loved how they cared for each other as well. It's also got a lot of steamy scenes if you're into that, so that was a lot of fun. But overall, just like a 10 out of 10 fun romance that will just like hit you in all the feels. All right, the next couple books were actually part of another challengey type video I did where I tested out Kayla's taste in books. So Kayla from Books and Lala, she reads a lot of sort of horror and also thriller books, and those are two genres that I don't actually read a lot of. So I decided to test out 3 of her 5-star rated books, ones that she loves, and see if I would actually like them and see if I would like her taste in books. So I talked about one of those books in my previous wrap-up, which was Bunny by Mona Awad, but the other 2 books in that video were Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and then In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. So I talk about these both in length in that video, so definitely go check that out. But just general thoughts on these. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is a thriller. It involves sort of these like pretentious college students who end up in a situation where one of them gets murdered many years ago, and 10 years later they're all at a reunion at their college, and they're still sort of fuzzy on what actually happened 10 years ago, because although everyone had this like one suspect, it was never actually confirmed if he was actually the killer. And so from there we're getting flashback scenes of the past of 10 years ago and what actually happened, and you get to see like the psyche of these like very twisted and messed up characters who have all of their different wants and needs. I personally love this one for the main character, who is like so unhinged to another level that I absolutely loved, and she was also a very unreliable narrator as well, along with the other characters who get like short chapters where they're also perspective characters. But I just loved how you had to keep guessing on who the actual killer was, but also what everyone's secrets were from 10 years ago. So if you're looking for like a fast-paced fun thriller, this is definitely one to pick up, and it had a really nice twist to the end as well, I think. And then Catherine House was a bit more of a miss for me. I did not enjoy this one as much as the other 2 books in that video, but this was still an interesting read. It is very strange, I will say, and will take you on a trip. It's basically about this one place called Catherine House, which is this like higher education academy college place, and I believe it's in the middle of nowhere, and basically anyone who's admitted into Catherine House is given tuition for free for the 3 or 4 years that you stay there. But for those 3 or 4 years that you are at Catherine House and studying there, you are not allowed to have contact with anyone from the outside world. So you were just sort of isolated in Catherine House. So the book follows our main character Inez, who enters Catherine House as one of the students, and she's sort of experiencing everything going on within its walls and sort of the cult-like behavior of the students and teachers. It was definitely a very weird book, very gothic, very suspenseful, and very mysterious as well. One thing that bothered me about this book was that it was mostly vibes, no plot, which is fine for some people, but I personally like a lot more plot in my books. So there was maybe like 3 plot points over the course of the entire book, and I felt like the ending was just so ambiguous, which was slightly frustrating as well. Although I usually enjoy slightly ambiguous endings, I did want more out of this one. It's by no means like a terrible book, but not a super enjoyable one either, because the pacing is sort of weird as well. But if you're looking for sort of a literary, gothic, suspenseful novel that is like mostly vibes, this is still a good one to pick up. Okay, and then next we have probably one of my favorite books of these past couple of months, and also like of the entire year so far. I think behind Kaigei, this is probably my 2nd favorite book of the entire year. And that book is All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. I have briefly talked about this, I think, in other videos. I also have a full spoilery reading vlog for this up on my Patreon if you're interested in that. Through my Patreon, you can help support me with monthly contributions and get early access to some of my videos, and also some exclusive videos, including the reading vlog for this book. I had a really amazing time reading this. I had an arc of the book before it came out, and it took me a while to sort of pick it up because I knew it was a book that was going to destroy me emotionally and mentally, and it definitely delivered on that promise. Basically, this book is sort of based off of some of Sabaa Tahir's personal experiences growing up. She grew up in the Mojave Desert with her family, who owned this like motel inn in the desert in this small town, and she faced a lot of sort of struggles with that. And so the 2 characters in this book are Noor and Sal, and Sal is actually the son of these 2 Pakistani immigrants who own this motel in the middle of the desert. And Noor is also a Pakistani immigrant, and she is going through her own struggles as well. She's lost most of her family, and she now lives with her uncle, who is a bit of a character, and the 2 of them are just going through sort of separate struggles and also a bit of a like complicated romance as well. They are really good friends with a little bit more to their relationship. And this is one of those books where you think the characters' lives can't get any worse, but then it does, and you're like heartbroken. But part of this book is also a generational story. We get parts of it told from Sal's mother, Misbah, from when she was in Pakistan getting married and like her arranged marriage, and then moving to the States and starting the inn, and sort of her life as she was bringing up Sal and Noor. You guys know I love Sabaa Tahir for her Ember in the Ashes series. It's one of my favorite series ever. And one of the things I love about the characters in that series is how resilient they are and how they are still so strong in the face of so much adversity. And I feel like that's very true of these characters as well. They go through so much in this book and still face it with the utmost strength. And I think one of the interesting things that this book sort of discusses is sort of rage as a empowering force and something that helps you get through some of the hard times, which I found really profound and interesting. So overall, this was an incredible YA contemporary, had so many interesting discussions, definitely a book that I think should be taught in schools now, and just one that has like this incredible intergenerational story as well of these different struggles across generations, which was just so interesting and amazing. If you're looking for a book to just like reach its hand into your body and rip out your heart, this is definitely the book that's going to do it, but it's also a book that will just fill your heart with so much hope and love for these characters. Alrighty, the next two books I'm going to talk about together because I feel like they're very similar in some aspects, and I was sort of comparing them in my mind as I was reading them as well. So the first one is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, and then we have She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. The reason I wanted to talk about both of these is because I bought these both around the same time, I think last year, and they both came out around the same time last year. They were both sort of marketed as fantasies with sapphic romances, so a girl-girl romance, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to read both of these, and I feel like both of these sort of delivered on those aspects in different ways. So The Jasmine Throne is set in this Indian-inspired fantasy world. It follows our two main characters, Malini and Priya. Malini is like this princess of this sort of empire, and she's got like this horrible brother who sort of rules over everything and who is treating her quite badly and wants to sort of sacrifice her for his own means. And she's been locked up in this temple in one of the colonized countries. And then we have Priya, who is a maidservant in sort of this colonized area, and she's sort of tasked with cleaning the temple room that Malini has been imprisoned in. And the two of them have their own secrets sort of going on and pass as well and end up falling for each other as well as part of this. And there's a stronger element of like this rebellion sort of brewing and multiple different perspective characters that come into play for this book as well. This was one of my 5-star predictions for this year, and although it didn't live up to like a 5-star, and although I didn't love it as much as I was hoping, it was still a really great read. I think what lacked in this book was that it was very slow to start, and a lot of the plot of the book doesn't happen until like the last 200 pages. It's about 500 pages long, and I felt like the last 200 pages is where most of the story happens, including some of the really tender moments between the main couple and most of their romance, and also some really epic moments with the other characters as well. This was actually my Patreon book club pick for February, and in our live show we discussed how we were pulled in different directions by the various different perspectives that were in this book. Aside from the two main characters, there's a lot of other perspectives that crop up in the story, and they sort of serve to take away from the general story and were hard to connect to at first until things sort of start to come together in the last 200 pages. So I feel like that was part of the reason why I didn't enjoy this one as much as I was hoping to. It definitely didn't deliver in some of the aspects that I was hoping for, but it also had some great aspects to it as well. I think overall, this is like a great fantasy and like a great start to a series. I'm excited for the next book in the series though, because I feel like that's where the story is going to take off and really move forward after those last 200 pages. In a similar vein, She Who Became the Sun, like I said, was also marketed as this fantasy with a sapphic romance. And this one, although the sapphic romance is like a very small part of the story, I feel like this book did a lot of things a little bit better than The Jasmine Throne did, in my opinion at least. I felt like the pacing was a lot better in this one. We follow our main character, who is sort of this nameless girl at the beginning of the story and has this horrible sort of family life. She's a very poor girl as well. And I should also say this is a historical fiction partly also. It's set in the 1300s and follows actual historical events and empires and that kind of thing. But yes, our main character is this very poor girl who ends up sort of fighting against her destiny and taking charge of her destiny. And she ends up in this sort of Mulan-esque situation where she is masquerading as a boy, as a monk. And from there, her life sort of takes her in the trajectory of the military. And so it becomes more of a military fantasy from there. What I loved about this book is that it starts with this very central main character and really follows her for the first third of the book. And then it's only after that that we start to get other perspectives come in and other parts of the story come in. And so this is actually another Patreon book club pick for me. And we also talked about in the live show for this one about how the middle dragged a little bit when the new perspectives came in, but it all sort of came together really, really nicely in the last section of the book. And so there's another really huge main character of the book who plays a really important part. And there's this really nice tension between the main character and sort of this antagonistic character as well. This one is definitely sort of fantasy in quotations because it has very little magical aspects to it. And that's one thing that I'm hoping to see more of in the next book. But I think what really shone in this book was the characters and their development across the book, and also just the pacing of the book as well, and also the romance between the main character and another character who shows up sort of later in the book. It's definitely a smaller part of the story than I initially thought it was going to be, but I really liked how it happened. This one is definitely great if you are looking for a military fantasy, if you're looking for something slightly similar to the Poppy War. I won't say that this delivers on all the things that the Poppy War does, but it is very, very similar in the sense of a slightly unhinged main character, the military aspects of it, and also like an Asian-inspired fantasy world, and also just some really great side characters as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on both of these. I definitely think She Who Became the Sun was more of a hit for me, but The Jasmine Throne has a lot of potential. I'm really excited though for the next books in both these series. Alrighty, and the final book that I read in February and March is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. And guys, this was so freaking amazing. This was our Read and Color book club pick for February, and I'm so glad that Livy and I picked this for February because it was such a great read. I talked about this a lot in our live show, and if you want to get like full in-depth thoughts on it, go watch the live show, but I felt like this was a masterpiece of a sort of sci-fi fantasy novel. I went into this not knowing too much about it, but basically, if you want like a Cliff Notes version of what the basic premise is, it's about these 5 different avatars of New York City itself, like the city embodied, and these 5 different people who embody like different boroughs of the city. And the 5 of them are sort of forced to work together to save the city from this supernatural sci-fi fantasy force that is trying to see the city destroyed. It was definitely one of the most unique concepts I've ever encountered, and what I loved about this book was the very amazing deep characterization of each of the main characters. As I said, there's about 5/6 of them who are these avatars, and they all come from like different backgrounds and different boroughs of the city, and really embody sort of those specific areas of the city. I feel like if I was from New York, this would be so cool to read because it was really like an ode to the city, but it was also just imagined in a really amazing way, and it involved a lot of like intersectional looks at the different marginalizations in the city. If you're the type of person who enjoys like Neil Gaiman books with like the slight sort of fantasy sci-fi element to a regular world, this is definitely a book to pick up. Another thing I will note about this one is that a lot of us, as we were discussing this for the live show, talked about how we read this through the audiobook, and I can't recommend the audiobook enough. I started out reading this book physically and was really not getting into it, but the second I turned on the audiobook, I just fell in love with the story. I think the narrator does such a great job of embodying the voices of the characters, the accents, and just their characters themselves. I think she did such a great performance overall, so it was just really amazing to listen to, and if I had to reread this, I would definitely listen to the audiobook again. Aside from that, I must say this is a super weird book, so if you're not into weird stuff, if you're not into slightly sci-fi, slightly fantasy reads, this is definitely not the one to pick up, but it was definitely super cool. It was both like a character study, but also a sci-fi fantasy, which I loved. And last side note about this book, this actually turned out to have a main character who is also South Asian. She's Tamil, which blew my mind. She's Tamil Indian, I think, in the book, which I did not expect at all. Like, I did not expect to see myself in this book, but it was really cool getting that representation as well. Alrighty, and with that said, those are all the books that I read in February and March of 2022 of this year. I feel like it was a really great couple months of reading, and I just got through so many incredible books, and also some books that were on my TBR for so long. I'm specifically thinking of The City We Became and The Jasmine Throne because those have been on my shelves for like years now, and yeah, I'm just so glad I finally got through them. So I'm hoping that the next couple months will be very similar. I don't know if I'll do a specific wrap-up up for April. I might roll it up with May as well again, like I did for these 2 months, but we'll see. As always, I would love to hear from you guys what you thought of any of these books, if you have read them or if you're planning to read them. And definitely let me know what you guys read in February and March and which books you loved from the past couple of months of your reading. I always get great recommendations from you guys, so I always appreciate those of you who share your thoughts. And of course, thank you so much to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. You guys should definitely go check out their sale. It's buy one, get one 40% off for Mother's Day. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, go check out my Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and TikTok in the description down below, and I will see you in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!